2nd, 2023. We will begin with our Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Raylene Wallen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we have 5 commissioners here tonight, and we will start with a roll call. We're going to ask the commissioners to state their name and then whether you have a conflict of interest with any of the items on the agenda.
Jeff Whitlock, no conflicts.
Raylene Wallen, no conflicts.
Lisa Jensen, no conflicts.
Robert Knudsen, no conflicts.
Melissa Kendall, no conflicts.
Thank you. We have 7 items on our agenda tonight. The ones with stars next to them are legislative, and they actually require the municipal council to make a final decision. We will just be making recommendations on those. The other items are administrative, and we will be making decisions on those tonight. We will start with item number 7 because the city staff has requested that we continue this item. So if any of you are here for item number 7, which is a conditional use permit revocation for a dance hall in the CG zone located at 1700 North State Street, you will not need to stay for that item because we will postpone it to the next, we'll continue it to the next meeting. Okay, we will start with item number 1. Tara Riddle requests annexation of approximately 106 acres located at approximately 2800 South, 750 East. The property lies adjacent to the East Bay neighborhood. Brandon Larson of the Neighborhood Services Department will be presenting this item.
Thank you, Chair. We've typically, in the past haven't done a lot of annexations, but I've brought a couple of them to you recently, and this is another one. This is city-owned property in the East Bay area. You can see that it's just south of the Timpanogos Golf Club, just west of, and then just west of the Pacific States property that lies just there to the east. Springville City lies just to the south of the proposed annexation area. A little closer into the property here. 106 acres. This is, as you can see, it's pretty wet, habitat for waterfowl. This is a wetlands protection area, and the city really wants to, has no development plans. So again, it's city-owned property. The city wants to bring it in. They don't have any development plans for it. They just want to bring it in so they can patrol it better. So this clicker has a mind of its own. So as far as, a couple of housekeeping things. So the annexation, the city has an annexation policy plan. That's part of the general plan. And the entire map shows 7 areas that are potential annexation areas for the city. You can see annexation area number 2. This is in the East Bay area. The subject property sits right there. So it's just right in that area. So this is a portion of annexation area 2. And so this has definitely been on the city's radar for annexation. And then you can see this is just kind of a close-up shot of the city's general plan map. You can see the subject property lies right there. And then the important thing is that it's green, and that corresponds. It has a parks, recreation, and open space land use designation. So that helps us to know that, okay, so if it's parks, open space, parks, recreation, and open space, then it should have a corresponding zone related to it. And that would be our open space, recreation, and park zone. And so that's what this, the general the city code says that when you bring a piece of land into the city, it automatically gets zoned to the lowest intensity zone of the land use classification. So parks and recreation and open space, the only related zone to that is the OSPR zone, the open space parks and recreation zone. So so there really is no proposed development again on this. This is just simply to bring it into the city so we can look after it a little better. Here's the annexation map. The property encompasses 6 parcels. You can see one of them is just a little piece. Most of there's an existing parcel in the city, and a little tiny bit of it was left out right there. So we'd bring that in, and it gets its name, Scotty Dog, from right. You can see his head and pointy ears right there. So yeah, there's the Scotty Dog annexation. So a few photos for you. Well, let me point out here. So as you probably noticed on the map, I-15 lies right there on the west side of the property, excuse me. And then Cooney Road, or 950 East, lies right there to the east. So a couple pictures here for you. So this is looking east off of I-15. You can see this property should look pretty familiar if you're coming into the city from the south. It's pretty wet, a lot of waterfowl on that water quite often. And this is looking from the northwest to the southeast across the property. This is just barely south of what used to be the Timpanogos Golf Course, and now is, we have the Norda Medical College there. So this is on 950 East or Cooney Road, looking from the northeast to the southwest. And the easterly side of the property isn't all entirely wet. There is land, but it is still pretty wet. As you can see, the vegetation on the property, kind of the vegetation that's usually associated with wetter property. And then you can see that it is a wetland wildlife protection area. So again, the big issue here, it's been sitting outside the city's boundary for some time, and the city has recently seen some activity on there, kind of like the last annexation I brought to you at the last meeting. It's kind of a patrol issue. They want to bring it in so they can patrol it better. There's been some, I think some people inhabiting the property, and so they just want to look after it a little better. So what happens from here is we're asking you to give the city council a recommendation of whether or not to annex this property. After you give your recommendation, it's going to go to the city council for a public hearing. That public hearing's already been noticed. Annexation, the annexation code, or the annexation requirements in the Utah code are pretty, they require a lot in the way of noticing. So we've already started those noticing efforts for the city council meeting. We've had to do quite a bit of noticing for this. So for that upcoming city council meeting. And so, yeah, we're just here to get your recommendation to set the city council up for a decision on this one. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Larson? Ms. Kendall?
Mr. Larson, how can the city control it better? Because the city owns the property, so they can't patrol it just owning it. How does annexing it increase their ability to control it?
That was not explained to me. I haven't spoke directly with the police department on that issue, but that's what I'm told is the main issue here. Tara Riddle has told me that police patrols the main issue for annexation on this one, and I was given no other details. So
Okay, and so along with that, why not annex all of that property? Because won't you just be pushing it to other places on Section 2?
when you're speaking of other property, you're talking about here or there or which?
You'll go to the next slide that shows Area 2.
Okay.
Right there.
Oh, right.
So aren't there other properties in there that have not been annexed?
Yeah, the city's talked about preparing an annexation plat for the rest of that area too, or at least some of it. This thing really is temperamental. I think one of the challenges with this area over here is it has an active industrial operation on it, and there may be some environmental concerns on that property. So I think that the city's going to be a bit more judicious in bringing that one in. Although, again, I've had conversations with Tara and with the city surveyor about that potential, an annexation plat coming in the not too distant future for that. But I would imagine that one's going to be a little bit, we'll be a bit more judicious in bringing that one in.
And then what is the downside to annexing property into the city? Just for my understanding, does it cost the taxpayers to annex more property into the city? Assuming it probably does.
I'm not sure on that. I don't know if there is a tax implication on that. If it is, I don't imagine that it's much. This is it is 100 acres, but that's relatively small in comparison with the rest of the boundary of the city. So,
Mr. Knutson, do you still have a question?
What would the city do with this property? Leave it as it is zoned?
Leave it as it is. Yeah, there's no intention to develop it. It's wetlands.
I actually saw in the trails plan that they are hoping to extend some sort of a wetland walkway or trail system down there. Is that your understanding, or is that me remembering wrong?
I have not seen a proposal for a trail through here. I guess it wouldn't surprise me. I know they want to open up some trails on the other side of the freeway.
Maybe it was that side that I'm thinking of. Then.
Yeah, I know there was definitely some discussion about trails on the piece of land that's just kind of that corridor just south of Lakeview Parkway.
Mr. Larson, is that little part that looks like a body of water north of this annexation property, is that already in Provo City?
It is, yes.
Okay. Yep. So this will be a continuous line.
I will say one thing. So this is already Provo or Springville City right here. There will be this piece right here that will not be annexed, and it will remain unincorporated. That is not owned by Provo City. It's owned by Utah Power and Light. So.
Is it normal to have an island like that when it's a utility company?
Yeah, I know the city just basically wanted to deal with the land that they own. It is that is one issue. It will leave an island, and it's obviously kind of similar to the rest of the property. It's almost all water, but that is one issue that, and I guess I don't know that I'd necessarily say it's an island though, actually, as I think about it, because this land right here isn't annexed either. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Larson.
Yep.
Since the city is essentially the applicant for this as well, we don't need to have the applicant address us on this. But we will open it up for public comment, starting with the neighborhood chair. Is there a neighborhood district neighborhood representative or chairperson that's here to address this one? East Bay neighborhood? All right. How about any members of the public that would like to speak to this annexation? Okay. We will close the public comment portion of the hearing and then we will discuss this as a commission. I would just say that I had the same questions as Ms. Kendall. I am actually not opposed to this at all, but I do wonder why they can't patrol it if they already own all the parcels. And I would wonder about asking Utah Power and Light to have their parcel be included just for cleanness, but I don't see why Utah Power and Light wouldn't want to. Maybe they have to pay taxes to whoever owns them, to whoever they belong in.
It could be a taxation issue. To bring Utah Power and Light in at this point would delay the annexation process. It's already been a little bit lengthy already. So adding them in would probably. This is a very finicky process, and so each time you tweak it it's a setback. So
it could be something we'd say we'd love to see, but not pending any approval.
I would recommend looking to that in a future annexation.
Thank you. Commissioners? Any items for discussion here on this? Ideas, thoughts, and if not, a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Knutson.
Forward a positive recommendation to the municipal council for item number 1. Tara Riddle requests annexation of approximately 106 acres located at approximately 2800 south, 750 east. Subject property lies adjacent to the East Bay neighborhood.
Okay, we have a motion to forward a positive recommendation to the municipal council for item number 1. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Ms. Wallen has seconded the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll start with Mr. Whitlock.
Aye.
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 And I will also vote aye. So that's 5 votes in favor of forwarding a positive recommendation to the municipal council for approval of item number 1. Okay, item number 2. This is also legislative, so we will just be making a recommendation to the municipal council. Provo City Development Services requests an ordinance text amendment to section 17.03.100, prohibition against issuance of municipal permits, to add language for administrative approvals. This has citywide application and will be presented by city staff Aaron Ardmore.
Hey, thank you, Planning Commission. So this one, like you mentioned, is citywide. The purpose for this amendment, I'll put up the language real quick there. Maybe. Okay. The purpose of this is to have better tools, essentially, to bring properties into compliance. You probably hear that complaint as well as the council does about enforcement in the city. This gives us another tool to do that. So the current code only limits the city to restrict a permit, like a building permit, when a property has a violation on it. This will enable the city to withhold other approvals like business licenses, planning applications, things like that, that are approved administratively if there's a current code violation, as a way to get the property into compliance. So this has come from the city administration and the legal department, and I bring it forward to you now for recommendation to the city council.
I have a question for you. Can you give us an example of a time that this would have been helpful or needed, or is that disclosure of too much information? Or maybe a generic example so that we can see.
Hypothetical.
Yes.
Sure. So let's say there is a property with occupancy violation that our zoning department is currently enforcing the code on, and they ask for, let's say, a solar permit or a residential addition. We can withhold those things, or we can withhold improvements to the property until they come into compliance with the occupancy of the property.
So something that would have been logical, but you didn't have the legal ability to do it.
Exactly.
we have any questions for Mr. Ardmore, commissioners? Okay, apparently I wasn't the only one who had that question. Thank you. All right, this has citywide application, but are there any neighborhood district representatives that are here to address this? Any members of the public that would like to address this item? Okay. Commissioners? Public hearing, we'll close that portion of our meeting on item number 2. Commissioners, do we have any things we'd like to discuss about this as we decide what we want to do? Staff has recommended that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the Municipal Council on this. I see this as a logical language change. We talked about this in our work meeting, some of the difficulties of zoning enforcement, and I see this as a tool that would help with that. So if you don't have anything you'd like to discuss about it, then I would welcome a motion on this item. Mr. Knutson?
We'll make a motion that we forward a positive recommendation to the Municipal Council for item number 2, Provo City Development Plot A 2023-0048 Services request an ordinance text amendment to section 17.03.100 Prohibition against issuance of municipal permits to add language for administrative approvals.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Knutson to forward a positive recommendation to the Municipal Council for approval of item number 2. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Mr. Whitlock with a second. Do we have any discussion on that motion? Okay, we'll start with Mr. Whitlock with a vote.
Aye.
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 I will also vote aye. So 5 votes in favor of recommending approval of this item, forwarding that recommendation to the Municipal Council. For those who came late, if you are here for item 7, that has been continued, just so that you know, if you are staying here for item 7, that one will not be heard tonight and will be on our next agenda. We are on item number 3. This is administrative, so we will be making a final decision on this tonight. It is Nathan Turner requests concept plan approval for site improvements over multiple properties and a conversion of a single-family home to a 2-family home in a proposed medium-density residential zone located at 141 East, 500 North in the Joaquin neighborhood. Mr. Ardmore is back at the podium to enlighten us with his wisdom and knowledge about this item.
And Chair, if you could also read in item 4 as they're related.
Thank you. That's correct. Okay, item 4 goes along with this. We'll hear them both together. Nathan Turner requests approval of a zone map amendment from the residential conservation zone to the medium density residential zone in order to make site improvements over multiple properties and convert a single family home to a 2-family home located at 141 East, 500 North in the Joaquin neighborhood. Item 4 is legislative, so we will only be making a recommendation and the Municipal Council will have the final say.
Okay, thank you very much. This property, so we'll go here on the map, just east of the library on 500 North. So you could see there's 4 buildings currently on these properties, the combined 5 properties. And those 5 properties currently have 7 residential units. Let me point those out. There's 3 in the corner building, 2 here next to it, and a single family home and a single family home. All of it is student rental occupancy. So a little bit of background on this. The applicant came to staff with an idea after obtaining these properties to make some improvements to better amenitize the properties and to make it more attractive for students to rent there. We were in favor of this idea and kind of found a path forward to make this happen. It was indicated that the Joaquin neighborhood plan pushed for medium density residential on this block. So the applications came in, and for the past several months, we've been working with the applicant on providing the material we needed to bring this forward to you. So the proposal is this, again, the medium density residential zone, adding the one unit to the single family home off of 500 North on the very east. So that's currently a single family home that would be converted to a 2-family home. And there'd be additional improvements to the property with volleyball court, basketball, barbecue area, improved landscaping, and parking. So these changes are related to the rezone. The only thing that would be required for the rezone, or along with the rezone, would be the conversion of the single family home to the duplex. Of course, you can make site improvements without the rezone, but making it all work together is related to the zone request. As you'll see, there's also, so there's a little comparison for you, so you can have kind of the image of what's existing there and what is proposed. There is a long-term plan. Let me go back to that. Okay. So the applicant demonstrated that the medium density residential zone could work here and provide an example of what could be built with that zone. Again, we weren't so concerned with kind of the long range plan of these properties. We're supportive of the short term plan for improvements. And the reason that staff is supportive of the zone change without, a lot of detail on the long range plan is because the future land use plan and the Joaquin neighborhood plan and general plan ask for, can you go to the next slide for me? This isn't working. They ask for medium density residential zone. So much like the city did up along 700 North, 800 North, just south of campus. If you recall, a couple of years ago, the city came in and rezoned all of that to campus mixed use. As that was a goal, an objective of the Joaquin plan to correct the zoning to correspond and comply with this future land use map. So the city went in and did all those blocks, even though there wasn't development plans at the time. That was a way to hopefully incentivize and encourage development of those blocks. We have a similar situation here, I think, where there is a good short-term plan with the rezone to improve the properties and make it more livable. And we believe the zone would work for long-term plan as well. So I believe that's all I have on this one. We're recommending approval on both these items, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on them.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Ardmore?
Just some basic questions, make sure I'm understanding what's being proposed. So, not demolishing any of the existing houses except for the one that's being converted to the duplex?
Yeah, so that one is actually just being converted. It wouldn't be demolished.
Okay, so it's like a 2-story house that's just being converted, basically.
Yeah, there's a single story and a basement, so
Yeah.
it'd just be converted to a additional unit in the basement. I believe.
Cool. And then I see that there's parking improvements. What's the change in the net number of spaces?
Yeah, good question. So the parking provided would be 30 spaces. Current parking on all the parcels combined is 26. So they're bringing 4 more spaces, which would bring the total up to just above 3 stalls per unit. So it's actually above code of what we would require out of the zone today.
And assuming one of those duplex tenants doesn't own 4 cars, it'll probably be an improvement to the current parking situation, correct?
Right.
Yep.
Ms. Kendall?
I just have a question too. The neighborhood was concerned about access. Can you explain that issue?
Yeah, so that you're referencing the neighborhood report attached to the staff report. They held this at the district meeting, and the one concern came out of what's actually existing parking. These these stalls right here, there was concern voiced that those backing out onto 500 North poses a safety hazard. As that's existing and kind of non-conforming into the site, there wasn't really any response to that from the city. It's been working as is, so we weren't really concerned with that.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Can you explain, so page 9 of item 4? Yes. It says that parcel 1 is single family or 6 singles. Can you explain why that's considered single family?
So it's a single family home, but the occupancy is for students. It's a batching occupancy.
So it has a different definition than other single family homes as far as how many occupants it can have?
Right.
The
Yeah.
batching singles is a different number.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Many of the homes up in this portion of Joaquin have that designation.
And then, what's my other question? Am I clear in understanding that, or am I correct in understanding that the amenities and the duplex conversion would still be would be okay within the RC zone? Like they're not, the zone change isn't required to make those changes. This is just a long-term.
The duplex
vision.
conversion wouldn't be, because the RC zone freezes in whatever was legally established in
So whatever,
2002.
it would need to change no matter what.
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to do anything on property.
Okay, my last question is, on page 2 of item number 4 staff report, the second paragraph, it says the existing site has some non-conformities with the MDR zone that would continue to exist with the concept plan provided, including parking and setbacks. Is that what you just told me, or is there something more?
Yeah,
besides
so that's that reference to Ms. Kendall's question about the parking. The design of these stalls wouldn't be designed that way today.
that? Okay,
And then we have a building here, a garage that is right up against the property line. Again, non-conforming as to setbacks, but it's existing, so it would
so
be
it's okay.
grandfathered.
Are we okay with bringing those non-conforming uses in instead of fixing them while we have the opportunity? Or we
Yeah.
really don't have the opportunity?
I mean, the zone change really enables a future opportunity better than the RC does. The RC really locks in what's ever there. So I think there is better opportunity with the zone change, to make the applicant tear down a garage, because he's asking for a zone change, doesn't seem to have a rational
Okay.
nexus there for us.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Ardmore?
Yeah, the item mentions the long-term plan, and how there isn't much concern about the long-term plan because it aligns with the area, the general plan.
Mm-hmm.
Curious though, like, if the developer wants to build what is proposed and for the long-term plan, and what is the process then in place for that after we grant this zone change?
Sure, great question. So when and if they're ready to do that, them or a future owner, they would need to come in with a full project plan approval that would come before this body for final approval and making sure that it met all the zone code and design regulations of the MDR.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And that would come before the planning commission because of the number of units in it?
Right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ardmore.
Thank you.
Mr. Turner. Okay, I would like to remind the applicant, find it, that we give you 15 minutes. Is that the right number? Okay, 15 minutes to make your presentation. That should be sufficient, but I just want to make sure you knew before you started.
Okay, yeah, I do not think I'll be using all of that time, but I'm happy to share with you maybe just some of our perspective on the project and give you some background information on how it got started and what we intend to do and what we're personally, me and my wife, she's here with me as well with our children, what we envision for this corner of the block there at the intersection of 100 East and 500 North in Provo. Obviously, a very visible part of Provo. It's just south of BYU campus. It's tucked just behind the Provo Library on the east side of the Provo Library. And while we were still in school going to BYU, my wife and I We used to visit a family member who owned one of these parcels. We'd visit them in their home, and we noticed that there were all of these MDR style properties surrounding this corner of the block, but this corner of the block somehow had never been developed, and we saw that as an opportunity. Fast forward 6 years, 7 years from that time, we were lucky enough to have opportunities to acquire these lots, and a couple of them had fallen into pretty bad deferred maintenance situations, causing, kind of an eyesore in an area of Provo that really has a lot of potential and is very visible. And so we personally kind of started hatching a plan 5 years ago to renovate the houses, to turn it into more of a cohesive community in the short term, as Mr. Ardmore described. But in the long term, we definitely do see it as a development opportunity that would allow for probably a 3-story building that would have private rooms for BYU students or UVU students. So what we personally see as beneficial about the rezone is that it would allow us, with that single family home that's on the southeast corner of this site, it would allow us some financial justification to invest more in the amenitization of the property, because of the fact that by turning it from a single family home into a duplex, that does provide at least 2x what the normal rents would be for that house. And it allows us the opportunity to justify putting in some of the bigger amenities that we've put on this site plan here. And those are things that are exciting to us. We like the idea of what that could become, and because of its close proximity to some really other great landmarks in Provo, not to mention its proximity to BYU as well, that it could be a really exciting place for students to live, and a beautiful complement to the community that it's in.
Excellent. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Turner? Okay, thank you. Do we have a representative of the Joaquin neighborhood here to address this item? Okay. Any members of the public that would like to speak on this item? All right. We will close the public comment portion of our hearing on items number 3 and number 4. And we will discuss this amongst the commissioners. Commissioners, what do you have to say about this? That sounds like you're in trouble. You're not in trouble.
Actually, I do have one question, and that is the property to the south, all those, across the street. Is that already MDR? South.
The property to the south is in the RC zone still.
And then east, of course, is already medium density.
It's RC as well.
Oh,
Yeah. So a lot of variety in the Joaquin neighborhood is still locked into the RC zone.
So this is basically the first block that will start to comply with the future land use map ideas.
For this stretch of 500 North, yeah.
How about to the north? Is that already high density residential?
Not immediately to the north. There is some along 600 North that has converted to that zone.
But the block directly north of this has not.
Correct.
Maybe this will be helpful for discussion. I made some notes about the staff report on page 4 of item number 4. It asks, would the rezone promote one of the top 3 housing strategies in the new general plan? And the 3 questions are, will it promote a mix of home types, sizes, and price points? And will it support zoning to promote ADUs and infill development? And does it recognize the value of single family neighborhoods? So I feel like it meets the first two and it only needs to promote one. That's the question the staff report is asking. So that's something to consider, and the fact that it aligns with the future land use map and the general plan, that's a positive thing in my mind. I love the community feel that this will provide, that there's enough parking, there's amenities. Somebody cares about how these look. I think that's all a positive thing to consider. That's regarding the zone change. And then as far as the concept plan, the medium density residential zone that's being proposed, I guess, as a zone change also is compatible. It's not a very high density, not a huge increase in density, and the parking is okay. So I don't feel like they're asking for any favors. They're just asking to improve a space that has been neglected. So I'm excited about those possibilities.
Yeah, I like a lot of things you said and agree. I also just look at essentially the block it's on, and it's at significantly lower density than everything on that existing block. So even just the small change that they're trying to do, make the current house a duplex, feels very insignificant relative to the block it's on. So, and the fact that they're making the parking situation better, I think with a simple assumption, which is that an owner of a part of a duplex isn't going to own 4 cars, feels like it's no concerns really.
When you consider too that isn't there an apartment building on the north?
Yeah, there is. You have the Campus Way, and then Boston, and then Fernwood and Presidio.
Those are already medium density residential, essentially. So it's, even if he were to decide next month that he wanted to change, I wouldn't feel like we got tricked. I don't feel like this would be a bad move. I love hearing that somebody wants to improve, and just those few amenities just make it. I love the way that it brings all those properties in together as a community instead of just individual properties living independent of themselves. I feel like that meets a lot of objectives we've discussed recently in general plan discussions. So that's great. Any other comments or discussion, commissioners? Okay. Then if we don't have any questions or any more comments or any concerns, I would welcome a motion on item number 3. Mr. Knutson is not going to do it again. He's tired of waiting for you guys. Ms. Kendall.
Sure. I make a motion that we, on item number 3, that the Planning Commission approve the short-term concept plan from Nathan Turner for site improvements over multiple properties and a conversion of a single-family home to a 2-family home in a proposed MDR zone located at 141 East, 500 North, Joaquin neighborhood.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Kendall to approve the short-term concept plan as shown here. I have do we have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, Ms. Wallen has seconded that motion. I just have a clarifying question, Mr. Ardmore, that I just realized. When we approve a concept plan, it doesn't come back to us for project plan approval, does it?
This particular concept plan would not, because it's just converting a single family to a 2-family.
So if the amenities that actually come in the project plan are close but not exact, it would still move forward at your discretion, right?
Yes. So the amenities themselves, much of those don't even need permit, right? So landscaping improvements and things like that wouldn't need a permit. So they wouldn't even come in front of staff.
Okay.
But some of them would, like the parking
how do we approve this in such a way that it ensures that the improvements to the property happen? Is that just this is why we're improving it, you better do it? Or is there some way to say that's why we really like this?
I think you can make a connection to that in your rezone motion.
Okay.
In the motion on the rezone, tie it to that.
Okay. All right. That doesn't change the motion on the floor nor the second. So are there any other items to discuss about the motion? Okay, we will be voting on the original motion, which was to approve this short-term concept plan for item as listed in item number 3. Mr. Whitlock.
Aye.
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 And I will also vote aye. So that's 5 of us in favor of approving item number 3. Item number 4, we're going to recommend a decision to the municipal council. Any discussion before we call for a motion? All right. Motion on item number 4.
How would we update this phrasing of the motion to tie it to the amenity improvements?
Well, if you agree with that idea,
It's a good idea.
let's discuss that before we have a motion. How would we say it? Would we make it a condition, Mr. Pepperoni? I see you coming forward. Advise us.
I wouldn't make it a condition. I would simply suggest that the developer gives serious thought to how he can guarantee with his zone change that the proposed amenities will be installed. And as soon as you're done and he walks out of the room, I'll explain to him what that means and how we typically handle that in the city as we're out in the foyer and before he leaves.
Okay. Did we all make our own notes on how we want to say that? All right. Lucky for me, I'm going to let one of you make the motion so you can figure out how you want to word that. Ms. Walling?
The planning commission recommends approval of the zone map amendment to the city council for Nathan Turner, who requests approval of a zone map amendment from the RC residential conservation zone to the MDR zone in order to make site improvements over multiple properties and convert a single family home to a 2-family home located at 141 East, 500 North, Joaquin neighborhood. And with a very high suggestion that the amenities noted and referenced today are carried out.
Okay. We have a motion to recommend approval of item number 4 as written.
I'll second that.
Mr. Whitlock has seconded the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Mr. Whitlock?
Aye.
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 I will also vote aye. So 5 votes in favor of forwarding a positive recommendation to the municipal council for approval of item number 4. All right. We are now on item number 5. This is a legislative item, so we will once again be making a recommendation to municipal council, and they will have final say on this one. Nathan Gagan. Oh my gosh, I got it wrong both times. Thank you. Gagan. Nathan Gagan requests an ordinance text amendment to section 14.34.320 off-street parking across a public street or with an intervening property to increase the allowed distance between the building and parking for downtown zones from 800 feet to 1,100 feet in the downtown neighborhood. Mr. Ardmore is back to wow us.
I'm gonna be tired of hearing my voice. I know I am. So this has been brought to staff. I'll put up the proposal while I can explain the background of this. So the applicants actually have interest in property on 247 West Center Street. They started with a business license application for lack of a better term, a dance hall, according to Provo City, which required a conditional use permit. Those uses anywhere in the city are approved by a conditional use permit. As a part of that conditional use permit, it was indicated that a parking plan would be needed for his particular building. Believe the occupancy was going to be held at 99 people, which would require 75 parking spaces. Okay, so if you're familiar with 247 West Center Street on the south side of Center Street between 2nd and 3rd, not a lot of parking available on the parcel itself. So in the city, because a lot of the properties in the city don't have parking on site, there's this code 1434-320 that within most of the city, it allows a commercial business to find parking within 400 feet of their business or their specific property, across the street or adjacent to the property within 400 feet. In Provo City, 400 feet is essentially one block. We have, on our gridded downtown and pioneer neighborhoods, essentially they're 400-foot frontages. But in downtown, that is extended to 800 feet, so 2 blocks. Right. So the idea is currently, if you have a business downtown, you could find somebody that's willing to give you the amount of spaces you need within 2 blocks. That's a distance that's been accepted by the city council as what people would typically use and walk to go to a retail business or a dance hall or any other thing downtown. So the request in front of you today for recommendation to the council is extending just that downtown allowance from 800 to 1,100 feet. The request to 1,100 feet comes from, let me put up the map, comes from that is that about the distance from 247 West Center Street up to the Peg parking garage just north of the Hyatt Hotel here. So that from there to 247 West Center Street, it's about 1,100 feet. So almost 3 blocks away. So that's why the request has come before you. As you might know in the staff report, staff is recommending against this change for a few reasons. We believe first that it logistically, realistically, it'd be a very difficult thing to enforce, to notice your patrons of where they're supposed to be parking, nearly 3 blocks away. Realistically, how many people would actually park 3 blocks away is up for debate, but just noticing them of that would be difficult on its own. In addition to that, if you look at this map, there's a lot of parking available off street within the 800 feet, within the 2 blocks. So kind of between those 2 reasons, the noticing the behavior of people, you're creating additional parking demand on the public streets within these areas, right? So Center Street, 200 or Freedom Boulevard, there's no on-street parking. 300 West, 100 South, you start to get into the neighborhood, into the Franklin neighborhood. If you look at the downtown plan, if you look at the general plan, there's specific objectives and goals to not let downtown uses and parking bleed into those neighborhoods, right? This was discussed a little bit before with a property further west on Center Street a couple months ago, if you recall. It's kind of same concerns here. So we anticipate there'd be some parking issues if not only this business, but every business downtown is able to find parking 3 blocks away that they can technically call out as we have our 75 or however many spaces at a garage 3 blocks away. Are people going to use that garage? Most likely not. And then we have congestion again downtown and a lack of on-street spaces. So we're happy with the standard as it is. We feel like 1 block away for most properties in the city is fair. People are willing to walk a block. 2 blocks downtown environment, you're going to walk a little bit further, especially when you're parking at some of the parking garages downtown. You're going to walk a little bit to get to your destination. So those standards, we're happy with those. We don't see a need to change them at this point. So we would be recommending denial on this text amendment.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
At the bottom of page 2 on the staff report, it says that there are alternative parking garages within the current 800-foot, and working with parking lot property owners within the already approved area should be the first option. So can you tell us why that hasn't already been tried?
From what I understand, the applicant can speak to this. He has spoken with them. Some of those garages are public, so they can't guarantee those spaces. The other garages are private, like the New Skin garage. From what I understand, weren't willing to put it in writing.
So what's the process for that? How is that accomplished? If you talk to a private garage owner, do you just like add to their sign as you enter that this is parking for such and such business? Or how does he get, because one of the things in your staff report is that people are going to look for a spot, they're going to park where they find one, and by the time they get to the venue and find out that they should have parked somewhere else, they're not going to go do it. So what difference does that make? How is that carried out?
Right. So I think there's kind of two parts to that question. One is yeah, I don't think people would get back in their car and go park where they're supposed to. But you do see examples of this in like the Zions Bank garage. There's a couple levels there where you go in and you think there's open spots, but no, those are reserved for this business or this use, right? So this kind of thing happens. If you recall the Blue Sky, Red Sky apartment mixed use project, had a solution to contract parking in a parking garage adjacent across the street. So those kind of things can be worked out. So logistically it could happen, but we just think when you're 3 blocks away, there's probably going to be better options.
It feels like it's going to get pushed to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Ardmore? Thank you. Okay. I already forgot. Gagan. Okay. Whew. Would you like to come forward and present? You have 15 minutes.
So I'm a representative of the Rise. So I'm going to speak, and then Nate's going to speak. If that's
Will you
okay.
tell us your name too?
Yeah, my name's Sean.
Sean
Homer.
Sean.
Yep, Sean. So I hope you're okay that I wrote down some of my thoughts. It's easier for me to get my thoughts together that way. So a lot of these things were kind of mentioned by Aaron. Feel free to ask him again if you need more clarification. But in the process of submitting our conditional use permit, we were told that we needed to find a solution for parking, something that was off the street, that would 99 with 75 spots. The 75 spots would actually be for a capacity of 299. I think 25 spots would be for 99. From my understanding, it's an occupancy of 4 people per stall. Is that correct? Or for vehicle? So that's how we calculate that. 75 would be for a 299 occupancy. So 75 spots, and the other requirement was, something no more than 800 feet from the building. Throughout our search for parking within this range, we spoke to representatives from New Skin, the Marriott Hotel, the lot just east of the Marriott Hotel, even the people at the 4th District Court for their not their parking garage, but their main lot, and even a couple of private businesses. And each time we were told that their parking lot were public, and that they didn't feel that it was necessary to need it in writing because the city already knew that it was public, and they thought that if they signed something for us, that they would have to sign something for every other business. They said that that's not something that they feel that they wanted to do. So each time we were told that, the parking lots were available. So let's see, sir. So yeah, if they allocated spaces to us, and they'd have to do the same with all the other businesses that needed to use their public spots, this seemed as unnecessary and burdensome process. Some of them quoted that. They don't want to have unnecessary contracts with a dozen different businesses when the spaces are already there for public. Chris Talbot of the 4th District Court actually said, "I'm not going to sign anything because a lot's open to the public, and city officials can call me if they need to, and get my approval, and saying that I spoke with him or whatever. So our dilemma, I guess, is that we talked to all of them and they've given us all verbal agreements saying that we can park there. But to appease the city, obviously we had to go somewhere else to find another solution. And so that's why we started looking, anywhere else really. And we came upon that PEG lot, for the Hyatt Hotel, which was just out of range, but they gave us the signature. They have 650 spots in their parking garage. And even though we only asked for 75, they said that we could have 100 plus for 24/7 access. They were not worried at all about, filling capacity or anything. Yeah, and so they did give us 24/7 access. So this fulfills the requirement to provide parking, but because it's not within the 800 feet of the venue and the public parking is available much closer to the venue, we can't imagine that anyone will park there except maybe when there's events that are, fully available other spots. And I think we agree. I think we're in agreement with the city. To quote the city, it says staff has concerns about the ability to effectively use the parking that is 1,100 feet away from the site. And to be honest, I think people are, like I said, people are just going to park where they're going to park, right? So Aaron had mentioned like parking where they're supposed to. I think in all the concerts I've ever been to, people look around and find the closest parking garage. And I've really never, I guess I can't speak for if there's people who who park in neighborhoods a lot. But I think having this other option, this other parking garage allows, in my opinion, take people off the street. So to recap, we've shown the city there's ample parking within that 800 feet range, gone out of the way to get signatures saying that we can use the parking. And we all agree that people will park wherever they find parking, regardless of whether or not, we've signed a contract with New Skin or Marriott or PEG. The other thing I want to point out is that these people blatantly said that they weren't going to sign anything for us. And so there's a good chance that any other business that comes to them, they're not going to sign a contract for them as well, which could, cause an additional issue in the future. And so I guess kind of the two options that we see, and maybe there's others that I just haven't thought of, are maybe approving the proposal to allow offsite parking to be 1,100 feet instead of 800, knowing full well that people will choose to park wherever they find, or approve the proposal still within the 800 feet range, allowing verbal agreements to satisfy the city's requirement, as we've shown that it is there and that they've agreed to let us use it. Sorry if that was kind of all over the place, but that's all I had.
Thank you.
Did you want to ask questions for me, or did you want Nate to go first and then ask questions overall? Or?
How about he goes first and then we'll ask questions to whoever we have them with.
Sounds good.
Thank you. I had Sean come up first because he had mainly handled this parking situation for us. There's a couple of things I want to add to what Sean said. I did just kind of a lazy Google search, and the additional 300 feet for an average speed that a human walks is 58-second walk. So to go from up above there to get into the 800 feet, it's literally 58 additional seconds. So I get the city's concern in terms of the other parking, but in terms of people being willing to park 1,100 feet away versus 800, I think is pretty much a non-factor for most people. Another point I wanted to make is that we're more than happy to continue looking in the meantime for closer parking as well. I think this lot could be a great option to get us started. And we do have some ideas to encourage people to park at that lot, such as like a voucher system. So if you show us that you parked at this lot, then they get like money off of their next ticket or something like that, or a free drink or a free concession at the venue. Because we do want to do our very best to get our patrons to park there if we've committed to do that. And so we have some ideas of how to encourage people. We can promote that parking on our website, in the venue space itself. So once people have come more than once, especially, they kind of get the idea of that lot. And like I said, we're more than happy to continue working on other parking options that are closer, because even if we get the 1,100-foot extension, it's still better for us as a business if we can find one that's closer. So we would be more than happy to continue working on that. Just a few things about the Rise. I can't speak to other businesses that this could potentially impact. So I'm the original founder of the Rise. We were open in Orem back in 2018. And we had this vision of a really inclusive music venue that was not only for live shows, but also really involved with community. And we actually, just before COVID hit, when the business was really coming into its own and hitting its stride, we were about to launch a whole integrated music education program where people could come in and take lessons from different types of teachers and have the opportunity to play, with like a pianist could come and play with a guitarist and learn these kind of things, and vocalists, the kind of thing that you don't get from just an isolated, taking piano lessons or taking singing lessons. A lot of times you don't get the chance to integrate. And so those are plans that we had to really bring in the youth, involve education elements to what we do. We got a bunch of quotes from artists who had played at the Rise. I won't really read those because I think our time's almost up. But one thing that we were really known for is being inclusive of multiple genres. Like Provo, I know, has the velour, which we're very similar to. Our capacity in Orem and the one that we would have here is essentially exactly the same as the velour. So in terms of our shows, it's a very similar business. What we would get told a lot is that people loved that at the Rise, it was multiple genres. You might see a country show one night and a rock show the next night and a Latin show, whereas a lot of the other venues are very much doing the same types of genres over and over. And so that really meant a lot to people, and we took a lot of pride on professionalism, the quality of our sound, the way we treated people. Alan, who's here, he actually built out the velour originally, and he's been involved in multiple venues throughout Utah. He's one of our key people for our venue and our business. He's kind of like our operations manager. And he's also very community focused as well. So just as a business, speaking for the Rise, we really do want to, what we loved about this location is it's just so much better than the location we had in Orem. When COVID hit, we kind of took that as an opportunity to say, let's relocate in the future to somewhere better. And Center Street on Provo, I think, is the best spot for music in Utah. It doesn't really get any better. So we would love to be a part of that community and add to it and bring people. So that's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any question for Mr. Gagan or for Mr. Homer?
I'm not really familiar with the event in Orem. What is it exactly? Can you, the dance?
Thing that we do are concerts.
Okay.
In the evenings. So Friday and Saturday, especially. And then
how many people do you usually attend these in your?
I would say our average was probably around 60. Occasionally we would have a sold out show that hit like our 300 capacity, which is what we had in Orem. But that was probably once every 2-3 months. The majority of our shows were 70 or less, average of probably 50 to 60. So hopefully we can grow that. We think this location is better, but that's where we'd be starting from, I think. Yeah.
Ms. Kendall?
That was my question. What's the capacity you're asking for in this location?
299. We've talked about starting with a 99 capacity potentially, which would be pretty limiting, but what's that? Yeah, that's just based on our conversations with the fire marshal. Everything that we've done with the facility to build it out has been with the 299 in mind. Like, there's a certain type of fire alarm system you have to get in order to get 299 versus 99. And so our hope has been to hit the 299.
Are most of the activities in the evening or is it
Yes.
in the day?
Most of, especially the ones that would have more attendance. Yeah, a lot of times in the day, we would have people rented out for like arts projects or video shoots, exercise classes, even like people would do like Zumba classes or things like that, but much smaller number of people coming to those. And I should mention, I think the report said something about in our staff parking. During the day, our staff parking would generally be like 1 to 4 people. And out back of our building, we actually have an alleyway where we could accommodate that. So in terms of our own staff parking, we would only have more than like 3 or 4 people for a large event. So I would say that's not really an issue.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Ms. Kendall?
So how many parking spaces exactly do you already have on property? Can you give us a number?
What would you say, Alan? 4? Yeah, 4.
Okay.
I think that's what our landlord said is officially, and I would say that's about what would fit back there. 4 vehicles.
I'm curious, probably more for Sean. I'm curious, why did you decide to go with this text change amendment from 800 feet to 1100 instead of the other potential option of changing the requirements for showing that you have the lots available or the spots available?
Yeah, I don't know if I understand what you're asking, I guess.
I'm saying while you were speaking earlier, you said that there were 2 potential options that you see. The first one is changing this amendment, what you're proposing right now. The second one would be to change what is the proof of requirement
Right.
for showing that you have spots available. Do you understand?
Like
And then
a verbal approval
a
versus
verbal
written.
or an email saying, hey, you can, your guests can park in our spots.
Right.
Why did you decide to go with this route versus that other route?
Yeah, I think because when we submitted it, the city came back and said, hey, the 800 range that you're looking for, like, or the peg lot that you've got the signature for is outside of the 800. And so if it's going to work, you need to file a motion to change something to be 1100. And we were just kind of single-minded, I guess, on that, and really didn't even think of having it changed so that a signature isn't required. I mean, we'd be all for that too, I guess.
Is that in the code? Where
I don't know the answer to that, but I'm assuming it is.
I think probably just because we hadn't seen that. We had seen the part about the 800 feet, but do you recall seeing anything that talked about this is exactly what's required in order to count it?
I don't know if Aaron could attest to that, but I'm sure there is something that says required to have a signature. And I'm telling you how many spots, what hours you can use it, and other information like that. So
I'm assuming, Mr. Ardmore, you're looking that up right now? Okay, because I had a question about that if we have a lot of public lots downtown for this very purpose, that we can accommodate people who are coming to downtown. And if all businesses in downtown are supposed to provide the number of parking spots that they're supposed to have, and very few of them actually have them on site, then shouldn't these public lots with all of these spaces meet this requirement? It seems to me that that's a more logical, like, I understand asking for it in writing assures that it's going to happen. But if we have public lots with so many spots, then how do we rectify that? What's your suggestion from your
So a
perspective?
couple of things. First, I wanted to confirm that I misread my notes earlier. 299 was the number. I just missed the 2 on my notes. So the parking, yes, in 1434-320, it talks about how the applicant shall assume the full liability responsibility for the lot as well as any costs associated with improvements that may be required to enhance safety. So that's something that staff and the planning commission is supposed to review. It's hard to do that unless it's in writing. So it's not specifically saying in writing, but it's I believe inferred, because how else can you review that? But getting to the idea of public parking downtown. So yes, a lot of properties, especially on Center Street, don't have on-site parking, right? And a lot of those uses continue to go on and on. A lot of that is done by legal non-conforming right. So when you have a restaurant or a retail establishment in a particular building and that business goes out and a new one comes in, the nonconformity of that use, the parking for that use continues. Right. And we assume that those are being parked in all the available. We have, I believe the number that I looked at today was around 1,200 or more public parking spaces just in the downtown, with the garages and the on-street parking available. So there's plenty of parking for the public, a lot of it free, downtown. And we assume those spaces are being used for many of these center street businesses. This is different because it's a conditional use permit. So it's a change of use, first of all, for the building. And because it's a conditional use permit, it has these additional requirements to make sure it doesn't have any adverse impacts on neighboring properties or the public. So that's kind of the difference between the most of these properties and what they're being asked.
What does a conditional use exactly mean? Can you define that?
Yeah, conditional use is something that's been defined by the council essentially as a use that is permitted in the zone, but because there could be concerns with health, safety, or general welfare, it has to go through an additional process, additional public hearing, just to identify those risks and to mitigate them by conditions.
I'd like to ask the chair, can I ask Mr. Ardmore some questions? I know his time has passed, but I have some that came up. So in the report, it said something to the effect of, the best way that the business should do this was to first find a spot. It's like to use the existing within the existing 100. But according to their report of things, it sounds like they've actually tried pretty substantially to find a spot. So I was curious if you would have additional thoughts on that line in your report.
Yeah, and I wrote that before we had that conversation. So yeah, I understand that they've gone through that, and it's tough. It's tough out there when nobody will agree to it in writing. I understand that they've tried, and I believe that they've done that.
Okay, great, thank you. And then the next question I had is, so is the business currently operating?
No.
Okay.
Or at
so
least
they're trying to reopen after COVID, or they're about to. Okay, got it. And so in a new location, got it. Okay, and then so what would be the consequence of not getting this?
So there's a risk of operating with a license and having code enforcement come down and shut it down.
Yep. So is this a conditional part, just to make sure I understand where we're at in the process? This is a conditional part for them getting their operating permit, their business permit.
Yeah. So there's kind of 3 steps. The first step was to get the business license, which required the conditional use permit.
Yep.
Which now is requiring a text amendment.
Got it.
Right.
Understood.
So.
Any other questions for the applicant or for Mr. Ardmore?
I'm sorry. So what you said earlier about how, I forget the exact terminology used, but essentially you're grandfathered in, to use more colloquial language, to the non-conforming use.
Right.
So if the Valor, for example, were to go out of business tomorrow and a new venue wanted to do concerts in Valor, would they be able to, or they have to get a?
Yeah, if it's within 12 months of when the Valor shut down, that non-conforming right lasts 12 months. If it's abandoned for 12 months or more, according to code, then the grandfathered right is gone.
But the Valor is not currently in compliance with what we're asking this place to do, right? Because of that basically non-conforming use continuance.
Yeah, I can't speak to that.
Probably not, but nothing on record.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Ardmore. I appreciate it.
What's the occupancy of the?
It's about, you said Valor was about the same as what you're hoping to achieve, right?
Their
like
occupancy
normally about 60, but when you have everyone standing in the Valor, you could probably have 300 people in there.
I think that's right.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to open it up for public comment. I just realized we haven't done that yet. All right. Do we have a representative from the downtown neighborhood here? Or from the district that includes the downtown neighborhood? Okay. Any members of the public that would like to speak about this item? Okay. We will close the public hearing portion. It was really long. I hope you guys were able to handle all those comments. We will now discuss this amongst ourselves, and I'm going to tell you that I'm conflicted because we keep talking about wanting to bring life, economically vibrant things to the downtown neighborhood, and this meets that. I totally get wanting to have things in writing, and I appreciate that because that makes things more enforceable. But I feel like there is adequate parking provided that's closer. And I don't know how to maybe just deny the request and ask them to keep trying, or to ask a different language modification that we're more comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with encouraging overflow into neighborhoods by expanding the circle and changing the code language for a potentially huge swath of users in the zone that might not be as accommodating. So
that's the issue for me too. Exactly that this would not just apply to this property, but to any property in the downtown 1 or downtown 2 zones, which butt against other neighborhoods. And then you've impacted all of those neighborhoods as well. So for one property to make all that change, that makes no sense to me. But there's got to be a way around this, I think, because you're right. There's lots of parking available.
Yeah, I think we have a problem with the city code, honestly, on this, because like it'd be a really big shame to not let them do their business in their property that they own that's perfectly in line, or are leasing, I don't know, it's perfectly in line with the intent and the desire of our downtown's area, and there's existing parking. And the only way for us to allow that happens to do the thing that I agree, there's a lot of unnecessary second effects. So to me, it's like there's some issue that we need to fix, because it kind of seems like it'd be silly to not let them do their business.
Mr. Ardmore looks like he's going to enlighten us.
Okay. By no means do we want to restrict people from opening businesses downtown, and we want this.
No, I'm not implying that. I'm just saying it seems like we're in this weird like puzzle where it's like.
Oh, I wasn't saying that
okay.
in response to you. I was saying that to prelude my my next sentence. TDMs, you've seen them for residential projects. The code now allows them for commercial projects as well. Could the idea of working with the applicants on some sort of TDM, of course, they'd have to provide a traffic engineer's study and different justifications. I think one that we've pointed on here is proximity to available off-street parking. Could be a pretty substantial argument justification for a TDM here. If it suits the planning commission, maybe a continuance would be in order, so we could work with the applicant on preparing a TDM package and coming back to you with that rather than a text amendment.
Can you do a continuance if the application is actually for a text amendment, or would we need to have a different item actually come forward?
You continue it indefinitely, so not to a certain date. So then that puts it on the back burner. If a TDM works, we can come forward with that with them. If not, they could come back to the city council.
Do you understand what I'm saying though? Because if we actually, the item that's been requested is the text amendment, if we continue it and they come forward with a TDM, we're still going to deny the text amendment. And so do they need to change their application?
They would have to submit.
They're allowed to do that
they would have to
within
submit
that
a TDM
application.
Okay. But yeah.
I like the idea of a TDM option because the TDM is kind of like a binding document anyway, where if they're not meeting the things they said they would meet within that, then that, if they just have a verbal thing and we trust that and then the parking becomes a problem, then we can say this isn't working and sort of like revoking a conditional use permit sort of thing, right?
Right.
What do you think? I like the sound of this.
What does the applicant think about this?
TDM means transportation demand management, and it's a plan where you have somebody come in and review your project and the transportation impact that it would have on the area, and usually in regards to parking. And so if you can say we have access to public transportation and we have access to this number of parking spaces that isn't going to hurt our neighbors, then the planning commission can review that and grant an exception to a parking requirement based on that. Did I give a good explanation of that, Mr. Ardmore? Okay. Yes, please come to the podium.
So I guess the other question would be, do we not do we resubmit to make the law be changed or the text amendment changed?
That's what I was asking him,
Okay.
and
Oh.
because I had the same question as
Okay.
you.
I
He-
just- sorry,
It
I
sounds to me
didn't
that if you submit, you can just change the wording of your application and it will just fall under a continuance without you resubmitting.
I think we're all in favor of this happening. I mean, I think we're all very supportive. I mean, I definitely am.
It also feels like you guys have done due diligence and understand what the rules are. And so if you can come forward with a way to not open up a can of worms for the rest of the downtown area by agreeing to something that just pertains to you, this would be a great solution.
People will still come. I mean, I drive around blocks just to go to Joe Vera's. So, I mean, you know,
But she never parks in the neighborhood.
you do what you have to do.
She wants her tacos. Okay. I think we're ready for a motion. I get the impression. So commissioners, if you have a motion that you would like to bring forward, I am ready to entertain that motion.
I'd like to make a motion to continue, do an indefinite continuance on item number 5. Nathan Gagon, I'm so sorry,
Gagan, I got it now.
Requests an ordinance text amendment to section 1434 320 off-street parking across a public street or with an intervening property to increase the allowed distance between the building and parking for downtown zones from 800 to 1,100 feet downtown neighborhood.
Okay, Mr. Whitlock has made a motion to continue item number 5 indefinitely. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Ms. Walling has seconded the motion. Do we have any discussion on the motion as stated? All right, we'll start with Mr. Whitlock for a vote.
Aye.
Walling?
Aye.
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 And I will also vote aye. So that's 5 votes in favor of continuing item number 5. Thank you. Which brings us to our last item. If anyone has arrived since I've made this announcement before, item number 7 has been continued at the city staff's request. So if you are here for item number 7, thank you for being here, but you no longer need to abide. All right, item number 6 is legislative, which means we will be making a recommendation to the municipal council and they will make the final decision, but it is this. Janet Dolan requests approval of a zone map amendment from the CM heavy commercial zone to the R18 one family residential zone for a portion of residential property in order to complete a lot line adjustment located at 737 South State Street in the Provost neighborhood. Mr. Ardmore.
Okay, thank you again. So this request came about by direction of staff, and let me give you the background on that. So the current zoning, as you can see, for 734 South Utah Avenue on the east portion of this right here, that home is R18. But this property owner also owns this property, this property, this property, and this property. And these are in the heavy commercial zone. As the applicant works through to clean up what you can see are pretty messy property lines, kind of cleaning up the parcels, descriptions and whatnot, the plat was submitted to do so. I can bring that up on the next. So this plat was brought to clean that up. But as you can see, when staff reviewed this, the residential portion brought in additional land to the home here. So this would be combined with all of this to one lot, which would be fine. It met all the standards and the zone requirements, lot requirements for the R18 zone. But if I go back, oh boy, sorry. You could see where that line was, a portion of that, approximately 0.24 acres, or I think it's 11,000 square feet, is in the heavy commercial zone. So then we have one property split in between 2 different zones. So I actually directed Ms. Dolan to submit the rezone request to clean that up along with her subdivision plat. So that can be aligned with the use of the property and the proposed plat. Now let me talk about the use of the property. If we look here, this kind of identifies it. So yeah, it's just over 11,000 square feet adjustment from the CM to the R18 zone. I think it's better shown here. So this is from the county aerial imagery, and the blue square is the highlight when I clicked on this parcel for 734 South Utah Avenue. You can see that line doesn't exactly match up with the residential use of the property. You can see a backyard, a garden, sheds. So historically, this portion of the property has been used for the residential for the 734 South Utah Avenue. Because these were all owned by the same people, there was never an issue with that, right? They didn't have the heavy commercial neighbor complaining that they were using their property. So as the applicant has come forward with the plat to clean this up, staff's directed them to ask for this zone change to adjust the zone boundary to align with that. If we can look at that compared to the general plan and future land use map of the southeast area, you can see here, kind of zoomed out and here zoomed in, that yes, there is, like I said, about 11,000 square feet in the general plan as commercial designation. Staff feels like that is a very marginal portion of land, and don't feel like a general plan amendment going to that degree would be necessary in this case, considering what's being proposed. There isn't a proposed change of land use, there isn't proposed development of any kind. It's just an attempt to clean up the property boundaries. So with that, I know the applicant has some additional images that she wanted up for her presentation. Let me go to those. But with that, I would just refer you to the staff report and staff's recommendation of approval of this rezone. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Mr. Ardmore? Ms. Kendall?
Does that make that property in the future subdividable? Does that make sense?
Which one? The R18?
Uh-huh.
No.
So you
The
could get
R18
more than
would
one lot out of that?
Right. The R18 lot. Let me go to that page.
I think it actually would be. It just doesn't have access.
Yeah, you don't have street frontage, and you don't have, I think I looked at this specifically because I thought that might come up. The 20 feet required for the flag lot, plus the 10-foot side yard from the existing home to that flag lot pole to access the rear, what would be a rear flag lot property. There isn't that 30 feet that they would need with the existing home there.
I had a question about this. If you look at page 6 of the staff report, the proposed zone map, there's a very small distance between the commercial building and the rear lot line of the property. Is this setback okay since that's in the CM zone?
Yes, exactly. The CM zone.
It doesn't have any transitional standards for setbacks that would be a problem with that building being so close?
No, if it was new development, if a new building was built in that CM zone,
Mhm.
they would have transitional.
They would have to
development
move it. Okay.
requirements. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Ardmore, commissioners? All right, applicant. Ms. Dolan, are you going to be presenting? Okay, you've got 15 minutes.
Okay, I've got maybe 2 minutes. So I just wanted to point out that my parents have had this property since the early 1950s. And it's, of course, from State Street to Utah Avenue. And there wasn't even a Utah Avenue when they first got that property. So they built the house and then they built the businesses. And it's always been used as residential, as you can see right behind the businesses. And it's really important for my family. We're going to keep it in the family for grandchildren, great-grandchildren. If you look at the bottom slide on the right, you can see a little fort or child's playhouse that my dad built. And it's really important for us to include that into the property. He built it with wood from the mountain property that he has. So anyway, that's our intention, is just to keep it residential. We wouldn't want to subdivided or anything in the future. So, and we did measure behind the big store building because the city has like 10 feet or something that we're supposed to, and there's plenty of room. There is a little bit of a shed there, and if we need to take that down, it's okay because it still keeps the little clubhouse safe. So anyway, any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Dolan? Ms. Kendall?
I'm just curious, why not just keep using it the way you are? What's the benefit to?
Well, my
changing?
mom is in her 90s, and so she wants to get her estate in order. And so we were cleaning up the boundaries. And I guess back then, you know, it was kind of like a fence line here and this or there, and it wasn't quite right. And as we were going through the property, and it's made up of little parcels that all put together, then we noticed like there's some gaps or whatever, and we get that fixed. And then we saw that what we want is the house to be residential with that property for my sister to inherit. And so we want to get that all fixed. And then eventually the commercial property might be sold, but the family would keep the residential.
I like that idea because it kind of creates a natural buffer having that giant backyard if somebody else did something with the commercial property.
Well, it's nice for the neighbors on the side because then they will be against a residential instead of a commercial.
Yep, I like that. Okay, any other questions for Ms. Dolan? Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, do we have a representative for the Provost neighborhood or the district that includes the Provost neighborhood that would like to speak about this item? We have a neighborhood letter.
Yes, sorry, I forgot to mention. Catherine Hall sent an email before the hearing. It says district has reviewed Ms. Dolan's request and wholeheartedly give our support.
Okay, we got 2 thumbs up from the neighborhood district neighborhood. I don't know what to call them. Okay, do we have any members of the public that would like to address us about this item? State your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Jenny Peterson. My husband and I own the property at 1011 East 800 South, which is directly on the south side of that property, and we wholeheartedly support this as well. Our home, of course, is residential, and so to increase the residential size of that property makes a lot of sense for us and our neighbors for the future.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, we will close the public hearing portion. And commissioners, we will discuss item number 6. Any thoughts you would like to share?
I think it makes it clear why they want to clean it up for me, that if that commercial property is sold in the future, then this needs to be solidified as residential, and that right thing to do.
Yeah, I think this satisfies the conditions to consider for a rezone. And I think we're always talking about going the opposite way with rezoning away from single family residential. And so now we're doing the opposite. So I think it's good.
Excellent. Any other thoughts, commissioners? Nope. Excellent. Mr. Ardmore, are all those blue lines actually the property lines on the plat map? So they have portions of each other that's overlapping, or were there just little small ones?
There's both in this case. So yeah, it's kind of a mess that they're willing to clean up. So we're happy about that.
That's awesome. Sorry to make you come to the podium for that. All right. If there are no other things that you guys would like to discuss amongst yourselves, if you feel like you're ready to make a motion, I would entertain a motion. Mr. Knutson.
I'll make a motion that we give a positive recommendation to the municipal council for item number 6. Janet Dolan requests approval of a zone map amendment from the CM heavy commercial zone to the R1.8 one family residential zone for a portion of residential property in order to complete a lot line adjustment located at 737 South State Street, Provost neighborhood.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Knutson to forward a positive recommendation for approval of this item to the municipal council. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Ms. Kendall has seconded the motion. Any discussion on the motion? All right. Mr. Whitlock.
Aye.
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 I will also vote aye. So that is a perfect record tonight. We have 5 votes in favor of forwarding a positive recommendation for item number 6 to be approved by the municipal council. Do we have any other items that you would like to bring forward, members of the commission? All right, then do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Ms. Kendall, do we have a second? Mr. Knutson won that race. All in favor? Aye.